Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, April 29th, 2019. Happy Monday to everybody. We hope you had a restful weekend. Let's go ahead and get you caught up with some Grand Solar Minimum update news. First, we'll take a look at some space weather. Our solar wind speeds are sitting at a low 325.7 kilometers with a density of 2.6, but that's going to change by May 2nd, and I'll show you why here just in a second. Let's take a look at our sun. We are blank again. This will be now 8 consecutive days without sunspots, keeping us at 70 days now for 2019 so far this year. All right, taking a look at our KP indices. Well, let's jump over to space weather section of the grandsolarminimum.com. Go ahead and refresh that. We had a little issue earlier with this. So we'll check TSI while that's loading. TSI came in on April 21st at a 1360.646. So we observed the dip around the 13th and 14th of April. And I spoke with TSM, Solar Observations, and he was pretty prompt and exact about where we were going to see TSI jump back into, and he was correct at 1360.6. We are now once again seeing those values staying in that range. And now, here we go. So let's take a look at KP indices over the last 24 hours or so. It's been low, max of 3. Right now we're talking about a 2. It's been quiet as actually we're at a 1 right now, 24-hour max of 2. Like I said, that's going to change, and I'll show you why. And it's going to be everything to do with this coronal hole that is now Earth facing. Let's put this in motion. And this is what we are looking at right now. This particular coronal hole is going to impact Earth with accelerated solar winds, possibly geomagnetic unrest. So we could probably see a G1 at this point for this storm coming from this coronal hole in particular. But as of right now, we are definitely expected increased solar wind speeds and possibilities of G1 geomagnetic activity. And let's go ahead and take a look at the reverse side of our star now. Right now, no sunspots to report, but there is some activity around the negative 180 area, and that could be AR2737, I believe, reoccurring, as this strong sunspot has been a nuisance for the sun here, and it's been the only thing that's kept the sun from being completely blank at this point. We did have a dual sunspot the last time we saw this region turning around. Another smaller sunspot area developed behind it, but we appear to have that same formation. So we'll have to watch and see if these are just remain active regions, or do these become our next numbered sunspot active regions. But as far as any kind of sunspots right now, we are blank. And there is something appearing on the eastern horizon here, especially if you look at the last few clips of the SDO. We will also zoom in just a little bit on that, guys. We will keep our eyes on this. Point this out. It's not much. Can't see anything really right now. But we're not calling it the next active region. But it is something to kind of watch, as it's the most action we've probably seen in quite some time. All right, let's move along to our headlines around the world. And first, we'll start in Ottawa, Canada. And Canada actually makes the broadcast tonight 2 to 3 different times. So you guys, we're finding a lot of information to our neighbors up north. But it says here, Ottawa is fighting massive spring floods that hit areas along the Ottawa River on Friday, April 26, 2019. A state of emergency has been declared in at least 14 communities in the region. The still rising Ottawa-Gatineau region's 2019 spring floods are officially the worst on record in some areas along the Ottawa River, with more poised to fall as rivers keep rising over the next 3 days. Here we have the water is expected to rise by another 18.5 inches in Lac Cyclone, and hopefully I'm not butchering that too much. Another 10.2 inches in Arn Prior, another 15.3 inches in Britannia, another 19.6 inches in Hull, 8.2 inches in Thurso, and 6.2 inches additionally in Hawkesbury. Records were also broken in Britannia, Ottawa on Sunday when the water level rose to 0.78 inches above peak in 2017. And here at watchers.news, they have the graphs to compare to show you guys where we're at and what we're looking at. The city of Ottawa has declared state of emergency as river levels continue to rise, threatening to surpass those reached when flooding devastated some neighborhoods just 2 years ago. We are now beyond our city's capacity, and that is why we have called in armed forces and have been told 400 troops will be deployed to the affected areas. This was according to Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson. States of emergency have been declared in the following municipalities: the city of Ottawa, the town of Huntsville, town of Bracebridge, township of Minden Hills, township of Whitewater Region, township of Horton, township of McNabb, city of Clarence, Rockland, township of Alfred Plantagenet. Probably butchered that one. Mari's giggling. What's that one? You don't know? Okay, thanks. Thanks for laughing. I appreciate it. Anyway, township of Laurentane Valley. Of course, that one's probably butchered as well. And county of Renfrew. So lots of action here in Canada. This is just part of the news headlines that they are making tonight. And Ottawa will see the high spring floods. Once again, another region that we are talking about bad floods, worst floods in a long time. And, we've seen it in the United States. We've seen it in Mozambique. We've seen it in Iran. We've seen it in Turkey. We're seeing it in Indonesia, the Philippines, Australia, now Canada, and a couple different areas now, not just one little spot here. So we'll leave the link in the description for the show. Thanks again to the Watchers. And staying with the Watchers, well, let's talk about 29 killed, 13 missing, and thousands affected after floods and landslides hit Indonesia. And this is data for April 28th. 29 people have been killed and at least 13 others still missing after floods and landslides in Indonesia, capital of Jakarta, and Bengkulu province in western parts of the country on April 26th and 27th, 2019. Torrential rains have triggered the natural disasters that affected almost 15,000 people, the officials have said. The floods and landslides cut off roads connecting Bengkulu with other provinces and overflowing river submerged surrounding areas. At least 22 people were killed in the province, along with hundreds of livestock. This disaster destroyed at least 184 houses, 4 school buildings, streets, bridges, and water channels within the territory. Floods and landslides have been striking most of the district of Bengkulu province since Friday, April 26. The search for missing victims was carried out by a joint SAR team. Some areas are difficult to access. Electricity is partially extinguished. Communication with other regions is difficult. Bridges, roads are damaged. Budget in regions is limited, said an official there. So you can tell that this area has been battered as well. High flood waters throughout these townships and villages. And once again, just an excellent collection of photography and video evidence of what is happening in another part of our world where we are continuing to see more flooding, more long-term infrastructure issues that are happening alongside with these storms. And the bottom line here, guys, is that we have to start budgeting and planning now for reconstruction of the infrastructure. The Green New Deal wants to rebuild every building in the United States with this green new technology. Let's start with rebuilding our infrastructure first, our sewer lines, our gutter systems. Let's make sure that our sanitary system can handle floodwaters, rising rivers and creeks, lakes, You know, we've got to address those issues first, because I can speak from experience that when you have issues with infrastructure, whether it be sewer or just water distribution, one little problem can turn into a giant problem just because of the age of the infrastructure. And clearly here we've seen tons of rain in a short period of time, plus more landslides, and we've been talking about the uptick of those as well throughout the region. Obviously, this bridge is damaged. There is no way possible that these people should even be standing in this area, in this picture. So thanks again to Watchers.news and staying with these folks once again. In fact, today they've got a lot of our headlines. A lot has been going on the last couple of days. This is more than 35,000 homes destroyed as tropical cyclone hits Mozambique. This is dated for April 28th, yesterday. So this is a story that broke yesterday. Another major natural disaster is affecting Mozambique just 6 weeks after a devastating tropical cyclone Idai left more than 1,000 people dead. More than 35,000 homes in parts of Cabo Delgado, where tropical cyclone Kenneth made landfall on April 25th as a Category 4 hurricane equivalent, were partially or fully destroyed, officials said on April 28, 2019. More than 160,000 people have been affected, many of which are now exposed and hungry. Government officials said aid workers tried to reach hard-hit areas outside Pemba, but were forced to turn back after rivers burst their banks, flooding homes up to their roofs. Helicopters could not fly, and a number of flights were canceled, preventing humanitarian workers and aid to be delivered by air, the Associated Press reported. Save the Children organization said total devastation affecting 37-mile stretch of the coastline and nearby islands. It was reported earlier that an estimated 90% of homes on the tourist island of Abu were destroyed as well. At least 5 people were killed in Mozambique and 3 in Comoros. Now, 1 is too many, but compared to the tropical cyclone Idai that took 1,000 lives, the only thing that we can credit is the preparation that happened, that we evacuated 30,000 people, and that might have played a role in saving lives as far as losing as many people as we lost during Idai. And again, excellent footage once again, thanks to the Watchers.news. Landslides, floods ravaging villages. Here we clearly see the water is up to most people's waists at this point. And just another example of, this is the season for these storms to start up, but still a little early for these storms to do the damage that we've already seen. And 2 big storms here now. Kenneth was a Category 4 equivalent. So we had Idai that was a Category 5 equivalent, I believe, and this is a Category 4, and just in the same region. It feels like Mother Nature is picking on Mozambique and drowning out a lot of crops and drowning out a lot of villages and roads and infrastructures and you name it. Rare snowstorm hit Chicago, breaking a 109-year-old snow record. Look at this. Would you look at that? Sorry, Mari didn't like that one. So we had a lot of rumors about snow coming in over the weekend. Thankfully, we didn't even see a dusting here in upstate New York, thank God. But an unusually strong late-season snowstorm hits part of the United States on April 27th and 28th, 2019, dropping heavy snow and causing hundreds of flights to be canceled. Chicago Air, an international report, received 2.5 inches of snow on the 27th, breaking a record that set a date back in 1950 where we only got 0.2 of an inch. The snow forced cancellations for more than 700 flights at the airport. Now, Alan Rippert of AccuWeather's senior meteorologist says the last time this much snow fell was back 109 years ago, back in 1910. The latest date on record for any measurable snow is May 11, 1996. Okay. However, we have seen snow as late as May 22nd. That was in 1917. As of 2100 local time, April 27th, Rockford, Illinois received around 3.7 inches of snow. This is the first snow since 2014, first accumulating snow since 1994. The first time the city has received 2+ inches of snow since records began in 1906. And take a look at their stats here, as we just read to you. Preliminary snowfall totals. Look, 3 north of Campton Hills, we had 4.4 inches. St. Charles, Kansas City had 4.4 inches. Chicago O'Hare reporting 1.9. Between 3 to 6 inches of snow fell across a narrow swath of northeastern Iowa and northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin. Check that out. April, folks. April. And a lot of this did not stick as well. The temperatures have been warm. It's spring. Ground is not frozen, but still, to see this much snow coverage, pretty impressive. Old Man Winter is trying not to let go of its threshold right now. And it's impressive. And wait till we show you the latest on our GFS outlook. Late season blizzard hits Alberta. Zero visibility leads to more than 150 crashes. Canada. So first we talked about Ottawa's floods. Now we're talking about Alberta getting hit with some snow. About 11.8 inches of snow fell on Carrot Creek and Rimley, 2.6 inches on Red Deer, and up to 5.5 on Edmonton. This was all local time at 12:39 on April 27. Up to 7.9 inches of snow was recorded in and around the city of Calgary. Calgary police said they responded to over 147 related calls to road conditions and closures. The snow was accompanied with winds of about 51 miles per hour, so this system caused zero visibility in parts of the state, forced road and highway closures, and resulted in more than 150 crashes by the day's end. 18 of them ended up with injuries. 62 departure and 28 arriving flights were canceled from the Calgary airport, and winter weather alerts have been lifted in all but 3 areas. Cypress Hills, Lethbridge, and Medicine had as of 10 local time on April 28th. But check this out, guys. The snow that we saw falling in Iowa and Illinois is nothing compared to this here. April 27th. That's quite a picture here. Visibility less than 1/10 of a mile. And another image here of cars off the road. Hey, it is time for spring, guys. Enough is enough. Bring on spring. Jeez. So, last winter, we saw the cold and the snow stick around in small portions of the United States last year. This year, we're starting to see it a little more regional, not just the United States, but a little bit all over the world, where we're seeing Old Man Winter is trying to hang on. So we've got snow in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere right now, where that shouldn't be. And, you know, a lot of people have been talking about how it's been really warm in the UK and Europe and all that. Well, here we go. Significant cold blast expected across Europe at the beginning of May. Forecast models indicate a significant cold blast for this time of year will affect an entire Europe and northern Africa at the beginning of May. After an unusually warm March, which is what I was getting at, March and April, Europe will get to experience some weird weather. America is already witnessing, with well below average temperatures, heavy rain and snow. Portugal, Spain, France, and parts of Central and Southeast Europe are already experiencing below average temperatures, but if models come true, it'll get much colder. Arctic air will first start affecting Sweden, Finland, and Norway on May 2nd, descend down to the UK, Germany, and Poland by May the 4th be with you, and by May 5th to entire Europe areas except Portugal and Western Spain and Northern Africa by May 8th. while western parts of the continent will warm up by May 12th. Southeastern Europe will remain colder than average through at least May 15th. That's almost to June, folks. Halfway there. A similar weather pattern, very warm at end of winter and the beginning of spring, followed by unusually cold temperatures. Heavy rain, snow, and frost was also observed over the past few years. This seems to be a bit different, however. The blast is coming somewhat later. So, beautiful reporting in this article, because they are pointing out that we are seeing these conditions over the last couple of years. But the difference between this one and last year and the year before is that this one's coming a little later. And that is where we're starting to see the concern. Today, we did a interview with Craig over at his channel, radiantcreators.com. And he asked me today, me and Mari, about what are the signs that make us feel like that we are heading into this grand solar minimum. And we told him it was the floods, the precipitation, the crop loss, and the temperature swings too as well. And this is an example right here of why we are talking about why we believe that we are approaching grand solar minimum conditions. When you have temperature swings like this, and they did have an unusually warm March and April, and to see these temperatures last out for the 15-day forecast before finally we start to see some normality return. But this article is pointing out that we are observing this here lately, and this year is the difference is that it's arriving later. So we've been preaching on this channel now for a couple of years about how temperature swings, grand solar minimum conditions, and then longer winters and shorter grow seasons. And I believe that's happening right now. We're seeing the very beginning of it. That's the scary part. This is only the minor effect. We're not even in the deep part of the minimum. So when we see these temperatures drastically dropping now, especially when we start observing this in 07, 08, 09, and now this part of the minimum, things are even colder. Conditions are getting even worse, which is why so many of us are believing now that this is going to look like it's going to be a very deep period of almost no activity at all in the upcoming grand solar minimum. So these temperatures obviously are concerning for any kind of spring crops. If frost will kill anything, snow or even heavy rain that could flood things out and ruin the early plant. So this early warm weather that they've received over here is now about to be spoiled by this Arctic cold blast that we have coming over the region here in the next 15 days. Guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.
All right, so let's move on tonight to another part of our show. And I found this article, Greenland's glaciers grows alarming the climate hysterics. Now, this article is proof of how mainstream media, they like to tell you the partial truth. They don't tell you the entire truth. They don't tell you both sides, especially if it's not in their agenda, if it's not something that's going to support their agenda. As you know, this article mentions the thaw that we saw in July 8th of 2012, I believe. And this event began on July 8th, lasted for 4 days before refreezing. A NASA ice scientist, Tom Wagner, observed you literally had this wave of warm air wash over the Greenland ice sheet and melt it. And to make it exciting, this was more exciting because this happened only a few days after a giant iceberg broke off from the Petermann Glacier in northern Greenland during its warm NAO phase. And I want to add as well, based on Summit Station ice core records, this occurs about every 150 years, according to Laura Cohen, a glaciologist from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland. With this last one happening in 1889, this event is right on time. The key here, guys, is that this warm phase that happened, that melted parts of the Greenland ice sheet, was during the warm phase of the NAO. And now we are in the cold phase of it, and we are experiencing record growth of the Greenland ice sheet. In fact, we thought, or not we, but others thought, that we were going to continue to see this trend that we've seen over the last 20 years of melting. But the NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation changes every 20 to 30 years. And so we've seen this periodic ice mass loss over the last 20 years and has produced about 10% of the country's icebergs. Now, the study published from last month in the Journal of Nature reported that the imagery, they use airborne and satellite imagery to show that since 2016, the Jacobshavn had been re-advancing slowly and thickening. And we link these current changes to the cooling in ocean waters in Disco Bay that spill over into the Elucid iceberg. Ocean temperatures in the bay's upper 250 meters have cooled to levels not seen since the mid-1980s. So, proof that we are witnessing a shift in the phase of the NAO, and just more proof too that mainstream media, when they talk about melting, it's like they talk about a heat wave in the middle of July in Georgia. Of course, you're going to have a super heat wave in July in Georgia. Just like you would have melt during a warm phase. And cooling will create more ice and growth of these ice sheets, which is what's happening right now, colossal amounts. And of course, CNN's headline is, Greenland's most critical glacier is suddenly gaining ice, but that might not be a good thing. Of course not. Anyway, we'll leave the link in the description, let you guys finish it off. Interesting article caught my eye this morning as I was drinking my coffee. I thought I'd share that with you guys as well. And some other interesting information today. Power stock, Chicago University proves unreliable wind and solar send prices soaring. This is another article talking about the Chicago study. I think I briefly mentioned adding chaotically intermittent wind and solar to your grid is a guarantee of rocketing power prices. The battle between the big three wind and solar superpowers, South Australia, Germany, and Denmark, is all about to whether it's South Australians, Germans, or Danes who get to suffer the world's highest power prices. The current winner is South Australia, which I have gotten many comments about how bad the energy crisis is in South Australia. Try they might, RE zealots have a hard time proving that wind and zealots. You say zealots, I say zealots. I say potato, you say potato. Thank you once again, Mari. It's a live show, folks. What do you do? All right. Meanwhile, back on Earth, a team from Chicago School of Economics have just proved the bleeding obvious. Here's what we found, and they list off this study here from April 22nd. Solar panels and wind turbines are making electricity significantly more expensive. A major new study by a team of economists from the University of Chicago finds. All right. So the reason I wanted to put this in tonight's broadcast in hopes that some of my friends on the other side see this article, and I've shared many links and papers to a friend of mine back from high school who believes in the CO2 theory at this time. And I think the reason why he believes in it so much is that the consensus is there, in his mind anyway, what he's been told all of his life. And so it's hard, just like most Americans, to disconnect from this theory of CO2 being the cause of warming. But I showed him the graph of where we have higher CO2 in the atmosphere right now at 412 parts per million, and we were at 402 parts per million in 2016. 2016, we peaked at a temperature of 0.88 above baseline, and that was in Celsius, 2016. Now, since 2016, the CO2 has risen by about 10 parts per million, so we're at 412 parts per million. So according to the CO2 theory, the higher the CO2, the warmer the temperatures. Except we are sitting at a 0.36 degrees above baseline, or it is 3.4. We actually are getting an update on this on Wednesday. May 1st is like our monthly Christmas present from Roy Spencer, where we follow and monitor the global temperatures and where they sit. But at the current time, I believe we're sitting at the 0.34 range. So we're about 0.52 degrees Celsius cooler than we were just 3 years ago. And that, folks, is significant. And on top of that, we had lower CO2 in the atmosphere. So I'm having trouble identifying with the reason why we see these carbon taxes and this attempt at solar and wind to be part of our infrastructure of power. You know, if they want to tax you because they're trying to give us clean air and clean drinking water, that's one thing. But when they want to tax you and continue to tax you because they think that they're going to save your life by controlling our emissions, apparently the belief is that if we control our emissions, we can save ourselves from climate change. And that's just absurd. And you're getting lied to twice. False reasons for taxing any carbon or any fossil fuel, and just simply lying about the effects of carbon dioxide or CO2 to the atmosphere, to the temperature. It's all lies. They don't understand it. Even people on the right side of this still don't understand that humans don't affect climate change. Some of them believe that we affect it a little bit and that we should have stricter regulations, but not as bad as what the Green New Deal calls for. But even the Republicans that are trying to say that man is causing any of this climate change is insane. They're not looking at scientific research. They're not looking at what's happened since 1995 with the cloud projects and everything. There's new research out there that reaffirms different theories. So what? There is a flaw in your theory, CO2. It seemed like it went hand in hand there for a minute. But I think the more research that comes to light, the more we're starting to realize, and especially solar and wind. Guys, I shared something on Twitter today that showed like 30,000 wind turbines in the UK produced 3.7 megawatts. Something insanely low. It's not enough, and it never will be. And surprisingly, to see some of these areas trying to shut down natural gas and coal, good luck when it gets really cold next winter. Because by the looks of what's going on in Australia, boy, it is not going to be fun here in the Northern Hemisphere. And we saw tons of snow all over the Northern Hemisphere this year. Carbon taxes to blame for high gas and grocery prices. This is another story out of Canada. This is story headline number 3 for you guys. Gas prices are through the roof. Most Canadians are near bankruptcy, and we can't even afford our groceries. That is the daily reality Canadians have to deal with. Of course, the reality of ordinary Canadians is something that the entirety lost on the establishment liberals, who can't seem to fathom why people are upset by their snooty little fingers reaching further into our pockets. So it sounds like Canada has the same problem with liberals that we do. While the threat of recession looms, that's the one problem we don't have in the United States. Over our heads, we are supposed to kneel down and happily praise our overlords for their wise guardianship of our environment while we sink more money into government coffers. This is the same kind of emotion that you have to believe that you're hearing from people in France. The same conditions where people are having a hard time affording groceries, fuel prices are soaring. I know in France they have a study out that shows that the majority of adults of the age of 38 and higher have had to resort into moving back in with their parents or family members. And, you know, I had a person tell me that, well, that happens here all the time. Well, that's not the point. There is a surge in this kind of situation in France that never was there before. Just like in this country, we went through that as well when we had the last administration in office and the economy wasn't doing so good. I'd like to say a lot of these kids nowadays are making enough money to live off of, but we are now starting to see the prices go up on food and fuel. Right now, gas prices are slightly up. I think the national average is over $2.75. People in California, if you want premium gas, you have to pay almost $5 a gallon. And I believe there's another increase in Canada, where now I think they're paying over $6 in gasoline prices for premium fuel. So, you know, we've got snow, we've got floods, and we've got high grocery prices and high gas prices. They have a recession looming around the corner. And listen, guys, it's already cold enough up there. So there is real concern right now for in these more northern regions of our world. And this is starting to get a little bit more serious, in my opinion, because the drumbeat is getting louder. First, this channel reports a lot on what happens in the United States, a couple of worldwide events that happen from time to time. But I have noticed an uptick of headline news for Canada with floods, record-breaking snow, and the cost of living, the carbon tax, how it's affecting the grocery prices. And this situation will only continue to get worse as we continue to see crop loss across the world now, not just in the United States, but across the world. So it's going to cost more money to import and export food. It's going to be, it could be slim pickings if the weather continues with this pattern that it's currently on. And before we head into our weather segment of our show tonight, Tom Harris, great guy here, he wrote a little article. President Donald Trump was right to ignore climate change in his April 22nd, 2019 Earth Day message. Instead, he focused on issues that actually matter, over which we have considerable control: protecting the nation's water infrastructure, conservation of land, water, and wildlife, improving forest health, and, of course, economic prosperity, the linchpin on which all the rest is founded. After all, without prosperity, we cannot afford to protect the environment. Trump explained in his official Earth Day statement, environmental protection and economic prosperity go hand in hand. A strong market economy is essential to protecting our critical natural resources and fostering a legacy and conservation. He is correct, of course, but this did not go over well with concern about man-made climate. Bloomberg reported that Andrew Dessler, a climate scientist, Texas A&M University, explained the statement is really the antithesis of environmental protection. They are not mentioning the gravest existential threat to man-made climate change facing humanity. So the fact that Trump is ignoring the alarmism of man-made global warming, to me, this signifies, this is also a signal from this White House that we are going to see more. And you wait, after 2020, he wins. The Democrats are going to run on climate change. And I have a feeling that once Trump is reelected, that we're going to get more truthful and transparency reports on what's happening to the climate and what's happening around the world, not just in our region. And serious preparations will begin to take place at that point. And they're going to have to, if they haven't already started, which I think there's people in the know already that have the ball rolling. This is only a matter of time, I think, before you announce some type of crisis about food or crops or weather. You want to make sure that the evidence is firm and strong. And I think they're trying to wait as long as they can. But folks, I think we're running out of time to wait for that perfect moment to explain what's actually happening, because as I said earlier in the show, we are seeing the increase of these rain bombs, these cyclonic storms that hit an area over and over again, farmers losing their entire crop, records being broke of cold and snow. And really the cold and snow records are falling a lot more than it's being reported as well. Especially with the length of time that some areas haven't seen a 60-degree temperature day. Some areas are still waiting to see that 60-degree mark, and they haven't seen it since October 2018. That's an impressive stretch of time without 60-degree temperatures, and that is exactly the type of thing that we're talking about when related to grand solar minimum conditions, where we have longer cold seasons and shorter grow seasons. We still get warm in the summertime, but it's not the same. And the deeper this minimum goes, the worse those conditions get. But I thought I'd share that with everybody. Trump, of course, he enjoys trolling the likes of Al Gore and others as well. Guys, stick around. We'll be right back with the weather part of our broadcast.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.
All right, we are back, and I wanted to point out first before we go to the GFS that weather.com, cool conditions are expected in the north central U.S. and parts of the northeast in May, while the southeast and west will continue to trend the warmer than average temperatures. Areas may see temperatures most above average include much of Florida Peninsula, as well as the southwestern Washington, western Oregon, northwestern California, according to the outlook released on Monday by the weather company and IBM Business. Now, this weather company has now forecasted correctly so far for the winter season and now the spring season in what appears to be another cool month. And NOAA, their temperature outlook is a little bit different. They don't have below average like this map is showing right here. So very, very accurate forecasting from the weather company and IBM Business. And these are the same people who also factored in that solar cycles have something to do with what has happened this year temperature-wise in the continental U.S. So while NOAA's going to tell you it's going to be an average spring or maybe even slightly above average, weather.com, and I know they're all still about man-made climate change. Their meteorologists speak about it all the time. But this has got to baffle them. The company they're paying, the information that they're using for their forecasts. So far, since last September, temperatures have been below average for much of the United States. It's a fact. Which makes it even more eager to see those numbers from Dr. Roy Spencer. I know I talked to a few people that think that we're going to stay in the 0.3 value of the temperatures. I can see that being a possibility, just staying in neutral for a few months, especially at a time where we're supposed to see increased warmth. And we're just not seeing it. And once again, this IBM Business, this company, the weather company, is giving information to weather.com, who has supported man-made global warming, and they know that there's more CO2 in the atmosphere, but yet their forecasting still continues to report more below average temperatures for most of the United States. The Northwest gets a warm up. Hey, thank God. And those guys have been pounded over there with snow and snow and snow. More snow than they expected to see this year for sure. The typical warmth in the deep south in Alabama, Georgia, parts of Mississippi. It's got on a slightly cooler side, Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Kansas, and a lot colder in the Dakotas, and that's because of the soil saturation. That's my belief, because here's a map of where all the cooler. Now pay attention where below average is right now, okay? Because I'm getting ready to show you something here. Let me show you something. Look at this area right here that's going to be below average for May. All right, and then let's take a look at suitable field work. All right, what do you see? The areas that are predicted to be cooler are these areas right here. And we only see less than a day of field work suitable in South Dakota, a day and a half in North Dakota, a half day in Minnesota. And this is where we're going to see the coldest temperatures for May. Now, we just talked about last week how saturation in soil have a cooling effect. So this is no fluke that the Weather Channel is showing us a region that's going to experience below average temperatures in May. When we show you here on the farming map, the same area, which is saturated and underwater right now. Take a look at the Ohio Valley, slightly cooler temperatures, okay? Well, slightly better fieldwork conditions, not much, but slightly better. So again, this correlates with the Weather Channel's cool forecast for this region. Not as cool, it's only slightly above average or below average in this region right here. It's going to be well below average in this region, slightly as well. Now, down here you go in the south, less saturation. It's 5.6 days of field work, 5.1 in Georgia, 4.7 here in Alabama. And let's go and check out this region right here on the forecast map. It should be warmer. And look at that. It's warmer. So this is no coincidence, folks. When we talk about soil saturation right here, and I'm getting ready to show you in the extended GFS, we're going to have some flooding in central Texas again, Oklahoma, Kansas, parts of Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois. This blue line indicates where we're going to see this moisture from the south into the northeast and then head out through Maine. This is going to be the exact track of flooding over the next 7 to 10 days in this part of the country. So even weather.com is subliminally telling you that the theory that saturation, wet soil has a cooling effect. This is proof when you match up the farming map and you see all, okay, another case in point. This is really obvious. Look at right here. 7 days, 6.5 days, 6.8 days. So let me guess. It's going to be warmer over here, right? Voila. Look at that. Look at that. Sorry, not that. This. The same areas that we showed you that we're going to have a full week of field work are dry and therefore are going to be able to absorb warmer temperatures. This isn't hard, folks. This isn't hard stuff to figure out. When you watch the weather and you watch these GFS reports, and look, GFS is not even the best one to follow. It's just easier to use on Tropical Tidbits. The Europeans are usually a little closer, but the GFS still does a good job of giving you a general idea of what we're looking at. But so to me, when I look at this temperature map right here, this all makes complete sense to me when you talk about the moisture in the soil having a cooling effect, and then you look at the areas that are below average big time. Those are the areas that are still flooded and underwater. And then the areas that are near or slightly below average, those are areas also that are slightly not as flooded as we see it in the far northern plains. So again, the correlations there, just another example of how we can connect the science of climate and temperature and everything and show you proof that we're cooling and we're not warming. And guys, mind you, there's still records amounts of CO2 in the atmosphere. So again, we're still rising on CO2, but we're cooling. And a part of the country, this part of the country that we're showing you that's going to be cool, that's not normal. But it has everything to do with the amount of rain that we've seen falling here recently and saturating these parts. The areas in blue are being saturated, and we'll continue to see that rainfall. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the GFS. Been talking about it all night. We'll go back here to April 30th, checking out a low pressure system tomorrow, early overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning. Now we will see rain in Ohio and across western New York, as this system moves across Tuesday, bringing us showers and snow to the very upper part of upstate New York. And then back here in the central part of the country, in the southern part, we have a big giant mess. Possible 3 inches in Denver, 3 to 5 inches in Denver, Colorado. Other parts of Nebraska could see rates of 1 to 3 inches of snow, possibly more. Obviously, it's not going to stick that much, but more moisture developing. And here we go. Look at these maps. Look at where it's cool. And look at the forecast of the moisture that's going to be in these same regions that are talking about below average temperatures. And I even said that the reason why the deep south down here appears to may have gotten a little break until about May 3rd is because of some high pressure that's out here in the Atlantic. But there are more dry days out here. That's why they're expecting warmer temperatures as well. So you'll see that here in the GFS forecast. But as we move forward here, more widespread chances of rain on Tuesday, April 30th, across all over parts of central United States. And as we get further into Wednesday, this system continues to grow, and heavy rain along the Mississippi Valley into the Ohio Valley into Wednesday, overnight Wednesday night into Thursday, as the majority of the precipitation appears to be moving towards Canada and through the northeast. But then on the backside, it reforms and more moisture is brought up from the Gulf. And this is May 2nd. So a repeat of showers and storms through the Mississippi Valley into the Ohio Valley. Again, now let me stop. Again, where we're seeing these blue temperatures, where it's going to be cooler. So far in our GFS forecast, it's agreeing that we're going to see precipitation, which the more soil saturation we have, you're dealing with a cooling effect. By the way, here is that high pressure system that's protecting the deep south from Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina for the time being. That does not last. As we move forward into our forecast, starting on the 3rd, we have a development in central Texas, which that still stands for what we were talking about. Moderate showers in the Ohio Valley into the northeast once again. And then over the course of the 3rd, more widespread chances across the south as that high pressure system in the Atlantic starts to move further away inland from the coast, and more moisture being drawn up from the Gulf. And 2 days, the 3rd into the 4th. Now, the first time we saw this forecast, we thought we were going to see a multi-day event. Nevertheless, this is the 3rd system that we've seen almost go in the same exact path, right where we see this light blue. So we keep seeing moisture going in the light blue area. And again, these guys are just still underwater and flooded out from all the snow melt and the rain and the snow they're still getting in that region. And again, got chances of more snow coming into their part of the woods by, check this out, May 5th. More rain, more snow chances for the northern plains. And again, another system developing in Texas, spreading into the mid part of the United States. And again, another signal, the GFS, they moved the dates. We first saw this stationary front just sitting over central Texas starting on May 3rd. Now it looks like GFS is trying to suggest that May 6th is the beginning of this stationary front that continues to produce heavy rain showers over the same area before it finally moves out. So the same signature is that we get a 2 to 3 day rain event in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, and then before it finally moves off into the Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, and then across the deep south, which this is their first bit of action as far as rain in the last 6 days. So they're on a break, they're on a hiatus, and then as we get into mid-May, we start to see the increasing chances of moisture returning to the south once again, and the northeast gets a slight break before May 15th. We see another low pressure system that's more than likely going to bring rain showers once again through the northeast. But guys, very active pattern here. We're still looking at snow chances on the map through May. Wyoming, Montana, May 4th, May 5th, same areas. And we don't see any more snow chances really in the United States starting, it looks like May 10th. So May 13th is when we really start to see the majority of this just being rain, and the rest of this being upper level snow in the higher elevations. But for the most part, May 15th looks like the first day of the 2019 year that we could forecast possibly 0 snow showers or chances of snow or even colder air. Let's check out what the temperatures look like for this time of the month. And spring-like indeed. The Midwest looking at 80s and 70s. The Northeast looking at the mid-70s and upper 60s. Gorgeous weather. We can only hope that sticks around. I know a lot of us are tired of this long winter that we've experienced. But let's take a look at the temperature progression over the next 15 days. And this is a normal so far. I mean, we still got a lot of 40s and 50s across the northern plains. That's where the areas that we've seen the saturation of the soil. And those areas that are getting lots of moisture are probably staying cooler. Even for May 15th, it's not unheard of to see a few 85-degree days in southwest Ohio. And really, their high temperatures dip all the way down into the mid-60s, the upper 50s in the mid part of May. So still cooler weather to parts of Ohio, the northern plains, and the Northeast. Of course, you guys don't start seeing 70s regularly until about late May and early June, but this seems like way on track for a typical spring for the Northeast. But again, I can see the cooling trends in the northern plains and in the Ohio Valley, Illinois, and stuff like that. So very interesting weather that we have to watch here over the next few days. Again, we just showed you moisture. We just showed you the suitable days for weather, and then we compared it to the temperature map. Obviously, that saturation of soil is causing a cooling effect. And the fact that we keep getting bombarded with more and more moisture in the areas that we just don't need it. So hopefully we'll have a better idea, too, of what the kind of crop loss we are looking at as well. Now, before I hand it over to Mari, I want to announce that this Saturday, we'll be talking with special guest Scott Chapman, Charles Scott of YouTube, and he is going to give us his presentation on the grand solar minimum and really just start from the basics and kind of take us all the way through a timeline. And the reason why I'm bringing him on is that he's a like-minded person who wants to educate the public about the grand solar minimum, not just about solar cycles, but everything, kind of like what we look to do from sunspots, what they are, what they do. And so I really wanted to bring him on, as I really believe that he gives a perspective of some kind of sense of order to how things are going to happen and where to start with preparations and stuff like that. But just another valuable bit of information that I think that our listeners can value. And the beauty of it is it's on YouTube. So once it's uploaded, it's there forever. So it's something that we may be on the air live for 2.5 hours on Saturday because of this presentation. But it's something where you guys don't have to listen to all at once. And also, it'll be something that you can go back and study over and over because the presentation is pretty detailed. And I have to say that it's good information and it's stuff that we thrive. I think the common ground between Scott and our channel is that we thrive to inform the public and do it in a way that makes sense and is understandable and clear as well as impactful. So we're very excited. We're going to have him on this weekend. It's Saturday night, 9 p.m. our time, Eastern time. Meanwhile, this week, I'd like to try to get back to a more normal sense of a broadcasting schedule. Thursday night, we will do a broadcast for our nightly update. And then Friday night, it'll be a little bit different. We're going to premiere the interview that we had today on radiatecreators.com with Craig. Very nice guy. Now, he's already interviewed Diamond from the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, Adapt 2030. He has also interviewed Scott Chapman as well. And Ben Davidson was his latest interview. So he's doing a collection, and then he talked to us today for a little over an hour. So he's doing a collection of people who are in the same field and cover the same topic. And just like what we're doing, he's gathering all the pieces of how the message gets communicated and what channel offers what to the community. And I think it's fair to say that Mari and I can always admit to this, that we are simply reporting on the grand solar minimum and its conditions, and also absorbing the information as well so we can pass it along to you folks and help explain some of this stuff that sometimes gets a little too sciencey for me. But thankfully, I've got a great partner in Mari who helps me comprehend most of the information. Anyway, with that being said, Mari, I'd like to bring you over and see if you'd like to say hello to anybody.
Oh, Jake, you and your compliments.
Well, you do a lot for us, and you're behind the scenes a lot too. So
crazy GSM zealot. What can I say?
Zealot.
You just cracked me up. Oh, Jake. It has been fun in the chat. There's been some conspiracy. I feel like I have my tinfoil hat on. I don't want to get into it.
All right.
Get all controversial, and then there's some people with all the flooding. They are purchasing rafts. So don't really blame them.
Yeah.
With what I've seen worldwide, sort of a nice investment to have.
Yep.
So, hello to everyone in the chat. It's always a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the premiere of the interview we did today on Friday. And then our chat on Saturday with the presentation.
Scott Chapman, yep.
I call them SGSM.
Well, hey,
is that a short,
SGM, well, his website is Super Grand Solar Minimum Info, or is it .info? Sorry, Scott. We'll have all that for the interview. Didn't mean to butcher that, but he has his own website too. So very, very informative. In fact, we'll try to throw that in the description of this video so you guys can take a look at that as well.
It's good to hear other thoughts from other people in the community, different perspectives, and we're all on the same path, different points, different angles. So it's very interesting. So I hope you guys all have a great night, and we are excited to get back on track with our schedule after the second move in this past year. It's been crazy. So I am excited. Hopefully we could do some of those little solar updates. So short, quick news
Get
things.
those back rolling as well.
Format.
Me too.
So, all right. That's all I got, Jake.
All right. Thank you, Mari. And again, thanks everyone who tuned in tonight to our broadcast on Monday, April 29th, 2019. We appreciate your support and your continuing following this channel to seek information and get the truth about the climate. Thanks for making us your choice on, a sort of daily basis. All right, guys, we'll talk soon. Take care.